Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Chronicles of Hollywood History, past, present, and future. Welcome. And here now, Corey Gomez.
Hello everyone and welcome. Chronicles of Hollywood History, past, present, and future. Today I am joined by Perry King, star of stage, screen, television. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, you bet. Glad to be here. Thanks.
I have to ask the first question. How did you get started in the acting business?
How did I get started? Okay, well, I'm talking about a long time ago now. 1970 was my first professional job. But really what happened for me is the story that most actors will tell you, I think. Pretty much just about every actor I know. Ones that really love acting, aren't trying to get famous or rich, but they really love the process. And that is that when I was a kid, my father's advice to me, great advice, he said, figure out something you do for free because you love it so much. And then figure out how to pay your bills with it. Not to get rich, just pay your bills. So when I was a kid, I loved watching Westerns, old black and white Westerns on TV. And then I got to this prep school I went to, and I was in a production there. I was maybe 13 or 14, and I was doing this extracurricular curricular activity, just because I should, and I wasn't very interested at all, and I had a couple of lines, and the night of the performance came. I think they only had 2 performances or something at the school play, and the curtain was closed, and I'm sitting there behind the curtain because I'm on stage as the curtain goes up, and I could hear the audience coming in and rustling and moving. It's like for an actor, it's almost like an animal out there, one single animal, and you can hear the animal moving around, scratching and making sounds and stuff. And then all of a sudden, the curtain went up, and as the curtain went up, the lights in the house went out, so the animal was in silence, and I could feel the animal suddenly stop moving and pay attention and get silent, and the lights on stage went up. And I'm sitting there, and I remember thinking, holy shit, this is it. This is what I want to do. And that's a very common story for actors. However, I got to tell you that I'm an old man now, and I've learned what that really means is it's a very neurotic impulse. What I've learned is that most actors, I don't think, really know this or care to know this, let's say. But what you're really saying is you're addicted to attention, to validation. For some reason in your life, you just haven't gotten enough attention. And what you want is to be paid attention to. And that's what that indicates. So it's not a healthy impulse to want to be a performer. Now, and a lot of actors have known that. I mean, Laurence Olivier said it's a ridiculous way for a grown man to make a living. Lord Laurence Olivier, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, and the world would be a much lesser place without great actors like him and like De Niro and Meryl Streep and all kinds of wonderful things. They do great stuff, but the root of it is wanting attention. So anyway, so I started acting whenever I could. In high school, I went to Yale. I wanted to go there because of their drama school, and in some ways that was good, although somewhat disappointing. And then through a series of sort of lucky connections, somebody came to see me from New York in a play at Yale, and they sent me to do an audition for something. And then I went to Juilliard and only managed to stay a few months. And those connections of people that had seen me on stage at Yale sent me to a couple of auditions when I was still just starting Juilliard. And I went to those auditions thinking, never occurred to me I'd get a job from them. I just said, let's see what they're like. They'll probably throw me out on the street in 20 seconds, but let's see if I can put into practice what Juilliard's trying to teach me. And because I had no burden of expectation, because I had no pressure that I was putting on myself to succeed, for that reason, and I mean it, for that reason, I got those jobs. I got both those jobs I was sent out for. One was a part in Slaughterhouse-Five that George Roy Hill directed, and the other was a movie called The Possession of Joel Delaney, which turns out was the hot ticket back then. the late 1970s, the very end of 1970. Every young guy in New York wanted that job. And I got the possession of Joe Delaney. I got the title lead in a movie starring Shirley MacLaine, but also starring me, unknown me. And I was playing a part that was schizophrenic, so I was really playing two parts, two separate people. I remember when I was doing this movie, I was thinking, wow, this is great way to start. Boy, I can't wait to see what comes next. Well, I tell you, it turned out, and this is not, I'm not kidding, that's the best part I've ever had in my life.
Oh, it's a great
50
movie.
years ago, and it's still the best part I've ever had.
Shirley MacLaine, Voodoo. I mean, what's not to like?
Oh, it was wonderful. And she was great. She was so good to me and taught me so much. She was wonderful. And that really is one of the things, after half a century of being an actor, that I feel that I can talk about is not me, not my career, but I have gotten the opportunity to work with, to know, sometimes to be friends with a lot of extraordinary people, just amazing people that are, in many cases, very well known. Just wonderful people that consistently were generous and incredibly helpful, very, very unegotistical about helping you, just wanting to help young people. People like, I worked on a show with Tennessee Williams when I was a young man, one of his plays. Worked with Peter Ustinov, Katharine Hepburn, James Mason, Shirley MacLaine, Charlie Durning, Ken Bancroft, just incredible people. Andy Warhol, I did a movie with Andy Warhol. And all these people were wonderful people. I don't think it's always true, but I've really been blessed that way. That's what's interesting to me about my career. Not what I've done, but the people I've known and the people I've been able to learn from. And they all taught me so much. Like Katharine Hepburn was trying to help me get a job in a production she was doing of Glass and Menagerie.
Oh, great book.
Book? No, it's a play.
Oh, I think I had to read it. I had to read it in high school, so I must have had to read like some novelization for it.
Oh, really? Oh, God, you got to read the play. The play is wonderful. You got to see the play. I don't think I've ever seen a bad production. It's such a good play that you can't do it badly, But anyway, she wanted to help me because she'd known my grandparents very well. They'd lived beside each other in New York City in the 30s. In a place in New York City called Turtle Bay Gardens, which is like 44th Street and 3rd Avenue or something like that. I can't remember. But anyway, so she spent an afternoon with me trying to help me be better, and she couldn't do it. I was too callow. I just couldn't cut it. But she tried, and in doing so, she talked a lot about Spencer Tracy, She said he was the best actor she'd ever known. These are her words, because I memorized everything she said. But she said he was the best actor she'd ever known because you could never see the wheels turning. She said he just thought, he concentrated. And she said he was the finest actor she'd ever seen. And most actors, certainly older ones, put him maybe at the very top of the list of film actors as being the most skillful, finest film actors. But then she described, for example, acting to me. She was trying to get me to understand how to work. And she said, this is her method. Again, these are her words. I remember that. She said, you get a blanket idea of the character, you work off the other person, and you throw yourself into the midst of the moment. Isn't that a beautiful, simple, pure way to describe the act of art of acting?
Yes.
Isn't that magnificent? So, ever since then, I've been... As an actor, that's what I try to do. I'm, never going to be Katharine Hepburn or Spencer Tracy, but I try. At least I have that to go by, that roadmap.
One of the many things you're known for, there's two classic, quote-unquote, coming-of-age greaser films. The Wanderers with Ken Wall and the Lords of Flatbush with you, Sylvester, very young Sylvester Stallone, very young Henry Winkler, who, and this is probably a very weird question before I even ask you about the movie. Henry Winkler, essentially, you played Chico, and Henry Winkler played Butchie. Henry Winkler basically took, in my opinion, he took the character of Chico and created the Fonz for Happy Days.
No, I don't agree. He took Sly's character, and he was very upfront about that back in the day.
But see, you were more the nicer, deep down ladies guy. I always thought he took more so your character.
No. What he did, here's what he did, because I remember him doing this. We finished the Lords, shooting the Lords. It was like 73, I think. I think that's right. And Henry and I discovered. Yeah, well, it did. You know, there's a lot that's good about it. Stallone's magnificent, just magnificent. He was supposed to be a small part in that movie. He just took it over because it was so breathtakingly good. When you work with somebody that's as incredible as he is, you just got to go along with it, stand back, and let him go. You know, just let him go. Stallone is he's a whole. I could talk for an hour about Sylvester Stallone and how much I admire him. People still don't realize how brilliant that man is.
Oh, he's a fantastic writer, fantastic actor.
Oh, absolutely. But at one point when we were shooting the Lords, I said to him, I think you could be a movie star. I said to him, and he said, I don't want to be a movie star. And I said, what do you mean? What do you want to be? And he said, I want to be an icon.
Well, now, he is.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Think about that. First of all, to think that thought, just to think that thought is an incredible thought for anybody to think, I intend to be an icon. Just that. But the man did it. And he didn't just do it once, he did it twice. He's an icon for Rocky and an icon for Rambo. Thank you. Both of which he totally created. The reason he wrote Rocky was because he couldn't get a job. He couldn't get a job because if you think of Sly without his fame and those characters attached, how are you going to cast that guy? Nobody could ever cast him as good as he was. It was so hard. It's a long story, but we were shooting the Lords. He came to me and he said, early on, he said, and we all just figured when we were doing the Lords, we kind of all figured, I just thought he was who he seemed to be. This dumb, talk like this. I just figured that's Sly, you know. He just is who he is. And he came to me one day and said, I wrote this script. I want you to read it. Tell me what you think. I thought, oh, God, this is going to be painful. And I took it home and I read it. It was about 4 hours long. It's still one of the 3 or 4 best things I've ever read in my life. He's never made it. It's about Edgar Allan Poe. It's an incredible script. He wrote it for himself to play because he was stumped. He couldn't get anything going because he was so unique. They couldn't cast him. If you look at pictures of Edgar Allan Poe, Sly back then certainly looked a lot like him. Edgar Allan Poe famously had a kind of a divided face, for one side of his face looked very different from the other. And so did Sly back then. His face, if you put a line down the middle of his face, one half looked different from the other. But more importantly, his nature was, he was a writer and a creator and a man with phenomenal imagination. Most of those scenes that are so good in the Lord, Sly wrote them. He created them in improv, but the directors, Marty Davidson and Steve Moreno, would just write down, they'd record the improvs, and then they put them on paper, and we'd do Sly's improvs in the movie. And, like the wedding ring scene, that engagement ring scene?
Yeah.
That's just out of Sly's head. Or the scene with the pigeons. And Chico shows up and Sly's with the pigeons. That's all Sly.
Jeez.
All of that. It was amazing. But anyway, so we finished the movie, and Henry and I discovered we had both booked ourselves to Hollywood on the same flight. We were flying out together, and the impulse was the same for both of us. It was time for us both to break into Hollywood and see what we could get going. So here we are on the plane. We fly out. I remember Henry got a rental car. I couldn't afford one. I don't think he could either, but he had his rental car. It took us 3 hours to go from LAX to Beverly Hills, which is like a 30-minute drive, but we were lost. We didn't know where to go. And so we're there for a couple of weeks. I remember Henry and I we because we had no money, we would walk down Sunset Boulevard. We'd get the spiel from the massage parlors, you know, and go sit with the girls in their underwear and the bra tops, telling us how they would massage us. And then we'd leave because we it was just something to do because we didn't have any money. And Henry he came to me one day. I don't think it seems to me I remember one day he was mad at me because I told this story, but it's true. It happened. So it's what happened. He came to me and he said, "Perry, I just got this part." And he said, "It's something to do until something important comes along." And it was Happy Days. And when he started in Happy Days, it was a small role that he had. It wasn't supposed to be a leading role. And he said, I just did Sly in the improv. So when Henry says, when Sly in the Lords of Flatbush, Sly would say, "Hey," like that.
Yeah.
When Sly says it, it's dangerous and scary. When Henry says it, it's sweet and charming. It's cute. And Henry did his version of Sly, and they loved it, and then he took off from that, and he made that whole part. And Henry, I'm not belittling Henry's talent, one iota. I knew Henry at Yale. In fact, I think I kind of helped him get the job in the Lords because we auditioned. You know, I was set, and then they said we got to audition this guy for the part of Butchie, my best friend. And so I went to Steve Morano's apartment, and we auditioned Henry. And I told him afterwards, I said, "This guy is an exceptional actor. I know him from school." And because Henry had been in the drama school at Yale. I was an undergrad, and I'd watched Henry just do wonderful stuff on stage. Henry's story is that, in a funny way, as wonderful as it was for him, Happy Days, it made him, you know, iconic as well. But it also meant that nobody ever got to see him until recently, I guess. Never could see what a wonderful actor he is until the recent stuff. But the thing he's doing that he just won an Emmy for. What was that? What am I thinking of? Where he plays an acting teacher, you know?
Yeah, because for a while he was, you know, unfortunately, you get that iconic role. Yeah, you get typecast.
Yeah, see, nobody could accept him as anything but the Fonz, you know? Which was such a shame because his range is enormous. Way, way greater than any range I have as an actor. I mean, he could, on stage, where you can spread your wings a lot more on stage because nobody's close in your face the way a camera is. On stage, he could do anything. It was amazing what he would do.
I always
and, you know, it's funny, that movie, because the guy in that movie, that without question, I think we'd all say this, Henry and Sly and I, the most talented of the bunch of us, by far, was Paul Mace, the fourth guy, who died 20 years ago or 25 years ago or something. But Paul Mace was one of those guys that just, and we've all known him, one of those guys that ruined everything good that ever happens to him. You know that kind of person?
Oh, yeah, I
Because
used to be
Paul
that
was
kind of person.
extraordinary. He managed to be on the back of somebody on a motorcycle, and they were both high, and they got killed on a motorcycle. But before that, he just would screw up everything good that would ever happen to him. But he was so good, so talented. He was in a musical. He was in musicals and beautiful voice. Incredible guy. So, you know, it's interesting, the people. I mean, there were a lot of good. Armando Santi was in that movie. Paul Jabbar was in that movie. Who else was in that movie? A lot of good people. They found really good people for that film.
Do you still have the jacket?
No, I've never known what happened to that. Just a little while ago, maybe a year ago, they did a screening of that movie down in San Pedro, I think it was, and Susie Blakely was there. And that's another one who was in that movie, Susan Blakely. God, I've done about 4 or 5 movies with her over the years, and just, I think she may be my favorite person in all of show business that I've worked with. Just such a joy to work with always. Really, I mean, just always ready to work and full of energy and happiness. And anyhow, they did this screening, and the wardrobe lady was there. Brenda, can't remember her last name. Damn it, old age. Anyway, I said to her, "Where did that jacket go?" Because I've often wondered where that jacket went. Because the other guys, I think, had their jackets, but I don't have mine. I don't know where it went. And she didn't know either. Somebody got it. Yeah, some sticky-fingered guy grabbed it. Who knows?
You know,
it wouldn't fit me anymore anyway, so what the hell? It'd be just depressing to try and put it on.
Piece of history. I'm always fascinated by things people keep from their films. You did a movie, no one ever talks about it. And it's hard to talk about because it can open a really bad can of worms, so I'll make it a simple question. You, in 1978, you were in a movie called A Different Story.
Oh, yeah.
A Different Story, and that was a different time in 1978 for anyone that has seen this film. Do you think a film like that could still get made?
Oh, I think that film could be made today without question. That film was so far ahead of its time, it's still ahead of its time. That film is other than the film I just recently made myself on my own ranch, a film called The Divide. It's out there right now on all the platforms, Mm-hmm. Other than The Divide, that's my favorite thing I've ever been in. A Different Story.
It's a hell of a good movie.
It's a beautiful film. A gentle, sweet film about real people in real life. And it's a film that is about, the premise of the film is be true to yourself, whatever that is. It's about two people who are gay, and they're perfectly happy to be gay, and they're not troubled by it one bit. It's unlike films made that time where everybody was in agony about being gay. Mm-hmm. No, these two people are perfectly happy, a woman and a man, very happy being gay, but they become best friends. She marries him because he's about to be deported because he didn't have his papers right or something. Mm-hmm. And then one drunken night, he's made her a birthday cake, a terrible birthday, or she made him a birthday cake. It's a misshapen birthday cake, and they're drunk, and they make love one night. And they're both horrified the next morning. What have we done? And they think, and they start to have a relationship, and they decide, and excuse me, I left out one important thing, which is that she marries him to keep him in the country, just to give him a legal status, So they're married now, and they've actually slept together, and they decide, well, what the hell, we should try to be the people that our parents always intended us to be, but we never tried to be before. And that's when they get in trouble, when they try to be something they're not. That's what the movie is about. It's lovely and sweet, gentle movie. It's probably pretty dated now, but I haven't seen it for a long time. But it's absolutely my favorite thing that I'd ever done before this last film I did, The Divide. And, but that years after that, I'd say, I don't know, maybe the early 80s. I'd have to look it up. I'm not sure. Maybe the late 80s. I went to an AIDS concert, an AIDS fundraiser. And I've been invited along with a lot of other quote celebrities to take tickets and stuff and help them raise money for AIDS, research and stuff. And I was conversation with a woman there, and she was asking me about A Different Story. And I said what I've always said about it, which is, he said, don't you think maybe that hurt your career? And I said, I don't know. I don't know if it hurt me or not, but I said, even if I knew for a fact that it hurt my career, I would do it again in a moment. I'd do it over and over because I love that film. And I'm proud of it, very proud of it. And this woman turned out to be a woman who writes for TV Guide. Her name is Mary Murphy. And she wrote a lie about me, a complete lie, an article saying I was ashamed of it, I was hiding in the back of this concert, I wish I'd never done it, all this stuff. So I have a lot of gay friends in Hollywood who read that and believed it and were furious with me, and that hurt me a lot. I'm not gay, but who cares? It doesn't matter whether you're gay or straight, but they thought that I said those things. The LA Times wrote some article attacking me for that, and I wrote them, and they took a retraction, but it's always printed on the last page. Nobody sees it. And I've always been too angry about that, but there's nothing, when somebody does that kind of thing, there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Because if you try really to fight it, you just make it worse.
Yeah.
So I just had to accept that she'd obviously been sent out by the TV Guide editors to find somebody in Hollywood that would say they were ashamed of playing gay or something like that, because of the time it was, and that fit the political climate at the time. And she couldn't find somebody, I suspect, so she just picked me as the one that was going to be that one, even though that was the opposite of what I'd said. But anyway, wait, you brought up that film originally. Why? Because you thought that I'd be embarrassed by it or something?
No, not at all. I just wondered if a film like that could be made because, the couple, they're both gay and they fall in love. And, nowadays that could be, some people could misconstrue it.
Well,
and
that's
say,
true.
No, that's not how we do things.
Yeah, that film was often misunderstood to be saying, go straight and get happy, which is exactly the opposite of what it's saying. It's saying, be who you are, whatever that is.
No, it's a hell of a good movie.
Yeah.
If you were not proud of it,
so if you ever made it again, you probably want to make sure that the film was very clear about that. I guess you could argue the film should have been clear that it was not suggesting for a moment that being straight was better at all. In fact, they get into trouble because they try to be straight. They try to be the American couple, and then they get divorced. You know what I've always wanted to do? I've talked to the director, Paul Ryan, who's a superb director, and Meg Foster was the co-star, my co-star in it. Another wonderful actress. Meg, do you know who she is? Incredible blue eyes that she's got.
Yes, she was in one of my favorite movies, They Live. She's unfortunately kind of fell into that path of being known for some films that she... I'm trying to think how to say it. Like, she's known for really good films, but they're not the kind of films she should be known for because she didn't get to showcase her acting in it.
Because she what?
She really showcased it. Like, everybody knows her from, in my generation, we know her from They Live, where Roddy Piper could see the aliens with glasses. And I guess she's known for that, and it's a great movie. But, a movie like A Different Story, that's what she should be known for because her performance is so good.
That one of the things I think we wanted to do today was talk in such a way that it might be useful to people that want to have a career in acting or want to go into show business. And that's one of the misconceptions, I think, not that you have this misconception, I don't think you do, but a lot of people do, about acting, that you get choice. You don't get choice.
No.
There's 50 people, maybe, in Hollywood, actors, that get to choose. And the rest of us scramble for what's left. We don't choose, they choose us. That's one of the most frustrating things about being an actor. Any other art form, and acting is an art form, even though it's sort of a step-down art form, because you're really not creating something, you're interpreting somebody else's creation, the writers and the directors, so you're kind of 2 steps down. But it is an art, without question, and it's a skill. And it's a skill you get better at the more you do it, and a good example is Paul Newman, who started out terrible by his own admission and ended up one of the finest film actors that ever lived just because he kept trying to be better. And he was married to one of the greatest actresses that ever lived, too, Joanne Woodward. But so you don't get choice. And I know what happened to Meg. It happens to all of us. You do what you can, and that's the advice that all the wonderful actors I've ever gotten to know always gave me, like Jimmy Coco, Charlie Durning, James Mason. They'd always say, do it. They'd say, the trick is do it. If you can't do it on Monday, do it on Tuesday. If you can't do it over here, do it over there. You just don't wait for the perfect great part because you'll die still waiting. It won't happen. And that's, by the way, what the film that I made recently called The Divide is about. I knew the part I wanted to play. I watched Sly create his own part and do it brilliantly and then incredibly, heroically fight for the part. Here's a story you'll love. I don't know how well known this is, but apparently this is true. So Sly wrote Rocky for himself. By that point, Sly had a manager named Jane Oliver, a wonderful woman who was my manager, and Susan and Chris Sarandon's manager. Those 4 people. And when I was doing the Lords, I said to Jane Oliver, you got to meet this guy. He's incredible. You'll love him. And she did. And so she signed up with him. And she would, went to Hollywood too. I went to Hollywood. Sly drove out there. I remember I was tuning Sly's old Buick, beater Buick, because he didn't have money for a mechanic, and I'm a good amateur mechanic, and I would keep his car running because he couldn't afford to keep it running. He had nothing going. And they saw the Lords of Flatbush to see if they wanted to cast him in a movie called Foster and Laurie, a TV movie. Mm-hmm. And the part was of a Staten Island young Italian cop, right? And they were watching the Lords to see him, and they got interested in me. This is before Rocky, right? Mm-hmm. And Sly was at my house along with Jane Oliver, and we were, I don't know, having a dinner party or something. And Sly said, he said, if you get the part of an Italian over me, I'll fucking kill you. He said. And I didn't blame him a bit, but I got it, and I took it because it wasn't going to do him any good for me to turn it down. They weren't interested, you know? And he understood that perfectly well, but he was so frustrated. So he wrote Rocky for him, for a part that he knew he could play the hell out of, right? Mm-hmm. And they saw the Lords of Flatbush, and they couldn't. Charnoff and Winkler kept trying to buy the script for him. And this is a guy, at that point, Sly has no money. He could barely feed his wife and kid, his young son. And they offered him up to, I think it was $300,000, which, by today's set, I'm talking about maybe $1.5 million today or something, $1 million at least today, right?
No,
and he has nothing. And he turned it down. And they said, all right, then we'll make the movie with you in the part, but we'll only pay you nothing, scale or something, right? He had that much faith in himself. I mean, that, of all the incredible things he's done, that's the most incredible, I think, to have such belief in himself, right? And he does the movie, but before they could get him the studio to sign off on him, I think it was Paramount, they had the head guy in New York watch the Lords of Flatbush to sign off on Sly. And I've been told this, I think this is true. I've been told it many times by several people. Sorry, this guy, forget who it was, Charles Bludorn or somebody. I can't remember who it was that had to sign off on Sly. He's watching the Lords, and he says, I don't understand why is the guy so blonde? I thought we're talking about an Italian. And Charlotte from Winkler said, yeah, well, there were a lot of blonde Italians in the north of Italy or something like that. Anyway, the guy said at the end of it, he said, all right, go ahead, make your movie. He thought he was signing me to Rocky. He mixed this up. And when they started shooting and he saw the dailies, he said, where's that guy? And they said, now, just to be clear, so everybody listening to this, it doesn't misunderstand me. I couldn't play Rocky. I would have ruined that movie. It would have been a dud with me in that part. Sly was right. He was the guy who had to play that part. I'm not sure I can think of anybody else in the world at that time that could have played that part and made it work the way he did.
I couldn't think of anybody today that could do it.
Yes, exactly. However, isn't that an incredible story? The guy screwed up. He thought he was watching the wrong guy. Oh, God. Anyhow, no. I forget what we were talking about. We were talking about, I guess, a different story. And Perry Murphy. And it's a frustration because you can't do anything about it when that stuff happens. Choice, that's what we were talking about. So you don't get a choice. You got to do the best you can with what you get offered. And it's not going to help anybody for you to turn everything down and sit there waiting for the great part. They'll just cast somebody else and you'll be left behind. So you got to try and make the most out of what you get. Some of the best actors I've ever known, a lot. I mean, I know dozens and dozens of superb actors that you've never heard of. Nobody's ever heard of. They don't know them. They never got their shot. And there are some people out there, I won't name names, that work all the time, that all actors say, why do they work? What's going on? How do they do that? There's a syndrome that several times I've been on the other side of things where I'm part of the casting process, and it's an amazing syndrome. There are people out there, performers, men and women, that are brilliant at auditions, but you come to know that that's all they've got. In fact, you're lucky if you get anything even as good as their audition when you cast them. What you hope, of course, is the audition is just the tip of the iceberg, and it's going to get better from there. But there are some people that do really good auditions, and never even come up to that level again. And you try to remind yourself of that and remind other people when you see them in casting. And those people work and work and work and work, and they're always so disappointing, and you think, why do these people work? You know, there's anyway, I won't go on about that, because inevitably you'll want me to give you an example, and I just don't like that when you say negative things about people, so I'm not going to do it. But
Patrick Kilpatrick actually, I can't talk. Patrick Kilpatrick actually teaches a class on auditions. I didn't know if you knew that.
Patrick Kilpatrick, who is that? I don't know who that is.
Oh, he's been killed. He's been killed by everybody. I think Stallone's killed him, Van Damme's killed him, Seagal's killed him. He usually plays the heavy, and he was in the Mark Lester sequel to the next film I'm going to ask you about, Class of 1984. He was in the Class of 1999 with Pam Grier, one of his early roles.
Oh, really? I never saw that movie.
You know, that's in my top. The Class of 1999 is in my top 10 now because it's so hokey. Now the class.
There's lots and lots of classes for auditions. There's lots and lots of classes for film acting. And anybody out there who's interested in acting, if you ever meet anybody who tells you they teach a class in film technique, and they'll teach it, and, you know, you should take it for 1 or 2 years, film technique, just turn and walk away. It's bullshit. There's no such thing. I can teach you all the film technique any actor would ever need in an hour. And the reason I can say that is because Shirley MacLaine, when we did the Possession of Joel Delaney, first day out there, I'm, I don't know how old, 22 maybe or something. I'd just been at Juilliard, and I remember the operator of the camera said, at one point he said to me, "Perry, you've missed your mark 3 times in a row. God damn it, why do you keep doing that?" And I said to him, "What's your mark?" And everybody stopped moving on the set. And Shirley MacLaine said, "All right, everybody," and she was the producer of this film, so she was the one responsible for money. And a minute even back then, a minute on a film set probably cost $500, right, at least. And she said to everybody, "All right, everybody, take a break, go get coffee, come back here in 45 minutes to an hour. We'll get going again." She sat me down and she said, "Okay, I'm going to give you a course right now. This is what you need to know." She saw that we were going to never get the film made if she didn't help me out here. And she said, "All right, Perry, this is what a mark is. This is what matching is. This is what a key light means. This is what, overlaps mean, and why you can't overlap dialogue, and when you can, and blah, 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 blah." And she taught me everything I needed to know for the next 50 years of my film career in less than an hour. It's that simple. Otherwise, film acting is just acting. Stage acting is just acting. There's different techniques to stage. The concept of the fourth wall and projecting your voice. There's requirements, but the core of it is the same premise, which is, and I'll tell you how James Mason described acting. People don't remember him as well as they should anymore, but James Mason was one of the great film actors and one of the great leading men of all time. And a wonderful God of all, that man was so good to me in a movie called Mandingo. He was so kind and generous, and I hope as I get that old, I treat other actors as well as he treated me. But anyway, he said to me one day, he said, "Perry," he saw me reading pages of notes I had about the scene we were about to play. I had all these requirements on myself that I needed to get all this stuff into the scene, right? And he said, "Perry, you should throw those notes away." He said, you make it too complicated. You shouldn't do that. Throw those notes out. He said, "Acting is this." He said, we are paid to believe that what is happening is really happening and has never happened before. He said, "It's that simple." He said, "It's not easy, but it's simple. Keep it simple. Throw those notes away." And I trusted him with my life, so I threw all those notes. I immediately just threw them away. Never looked at all those notes again. Didn't work that way ever again. Before you start shooting, you get lots and You do lots of research and planning and all that, but not while you're working. And my acting in that film, the moment he said that to me, my acting went and went up a big notch from where it had been. Because he's right. That's what it is. To believe that what's happening is really happening and has never happened before. You know?
Now, I have to...
So what?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
I have to say now, a movie that... Sorry, fans. He's going to tell you. I don't have to. A movie you're very well known for. Class of 1984. I know it's not one of your favorite films. Your acting in that is so good, and it's overshadowed by the violence because and when I saw the film originally, you know, when I was younger, it's just cool punk rock gang violent action horror film, whatever. When I watched it again, you know, a few more times, I've seen it I don't know how many times. It has a very much a Straw Dog Sam Peckinpah type feel to it to me. Like you're such a... By no means are you like the Dustin Hoffman character where you're just a complete pussy or anything, but you're trying to help this kid and you're trying to help him and you're trying and they push you and even though you get mad sometimes, you still, you know, you see that good in someone and then your wife gets raped, they come after you again and then you snap. I mean, you take them all out. And I think that performance is very overlooked because everybody just sees, hey, here's this punk rock gang movie.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. That was a tough film because I didn't like the amount of violence. It wasn't really in the script. It got increased in ferocity and in its variance as we went, and I didn't like that. I fought against it, but it's my belief that when you work with a director, it's their vision, not yours, and your job is to tell their story. So I wouldn't refuse to do things, but I didn't like all that violence. I thought it was way unnecessary, way over the top. But you know, it's obviously a large part of what made it successful and commercial. And it is a commercial enterprise. It's show business. You know, the business is a large part of it. You know, I had an end. I don't know, for anybody who's listening, if they don't know the film, this won't mean much, but to you it might be interesting. I had an end that I thought we should do in that film, and I tried to talk Mark Lester, the director, into this end. And you know, I was the one who suggested Tchaikovsky's 1812 overture for the end of that film, and I was kind of sorry I'd done it because I thought it was so fulfilling to the music, but because it's a piece of music I love very much. But I wanted the film to end with a scene where you see, just like the opening scene, you see this guy walking through all these students. He's a teacher. And you think it's me. I had a beard that I'd grown because I'd just come off the production of Merchant of Venice, I think it was. So I had this beard that seemed to fit for the character, so I kept it. And I wanted Mark to shoot a young guy walking with books in a briefcase through all the kids' morning school. And you think it's me for a while, same beard, some kind of suit and stuff. And then you get closer and you realize it's not me. It's somebody who looks just like me, maybe. But it's not me. And you see some of the hoods that, you know, from the different guys, not the ones from the film. And you realize that it's like Shakespeare's tragedies, which are big circles. It all starts over, like the Scottish play. I'm so superstitious as an actor, I won't say the name of that play, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. And that's an actor superstition about that play. But so it's all going to happen again. The whole circle is going to start all over again. I thought that would have been a really good end to that film, but Mark didn't. So what are you going to do?
And that's,
but I ran into Mark not long ago. I was telling you before we started the show, and I was at Cannes with my film The Divide, and he was there, and we saw each other in this bar for the first time in 40 years. I don't know, something like that. And we both just burst out laughing. It was so funny because here we are, you know, we're 40 years older, so we both look like cartoons of ourselves. I mean, it's like one of the things I've got to do over the years was I got to do Han Solo. I'm the second of 3 people to ever play the part of Han Solo. I played it on radio for National Public Radio.
I remember that.
And we did the whole thing. We did the first 3 movies, but way expanded all of Lucas material that he created. So the first radio show, the first Star Wars was, I think it was like 8 hours long or something. And you'd think, radio? How could you do Star Wars on radio? That doesn't make any sense. It's all a visual movie. But it turns out it worked extremely well. But we did the first 2 of the trilogy, and then like 15 years later, for some reason, we came back and did the 3rd one. And most of the original cast came back to play the parts they played. And we're all 15 years older. And the same thing. We all just burst out laughing because we're all the same people. But we all look like we'd been up all night, drunk, hungover, because that's what age does to you. You look like the same person, but like you've been dragged behind a pickup truck for a couple hours or something. And when I saw Mark and he saw me, it was just hysterically funny to both of us that we were so gray and old and worn out looking.
To me, the real sell point, because Timothy Van Patten, everybody was good. It was well casted. And granted, I'm going to try to make light. They're selling drugs. It's alluded to that he's doing prostitution. They give a guy some bad junk. He gets killed, falls off a flagpole. But to me, the real turning point when it was like, God, these guys really are scum, was when they killed all of the animals that Roddy McDowall had. And I don't like animal deaths anyway, but the way Roddy McDowall, who's one of my favorite actors, way he sold it, like, he was, he wanted to cry, he wanted to kill him, was so good. Then it was like, at that point, it was like, I want these people to die. I don't care who kills them.
Yeah.
He sold it so
that
good.
Was my favorite part of that whole shoot was when Roddy McDowall was around for, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks. I was just so sad when he finished.
Oh, he was only there for a couple weeks?
Yeah, I think so, as I remember.
Wow.
Oh, God. Well, it always takes a lot longer than you think to shoot stuff. But, God, he was fun to work with. He was just a joy.
My favorite.
That's another guy I have to remember, because when I think of the people that I've worked with, I got to make sure he's on my list, my mental list of great people.
Oh, he's Fright Night is my favorite horror film. Class of 1984 is one of my favorite gang films. Planet of the Apes. Under a lot of latex, it's still Roddy McDowall. But no, the only thing I didn't like about Class of 1984, and I get in arguments with my friend, I hated this song by Alice Cooper in the beginning. It was nothing against Alice Cooper, but it's like, here's this hardened punk rock new wave gang, and we've got this real slow ballad by Alice Cooper opening it up. That was the only thing that I ever was kind of like, for some reason, and I know it fits the narrative, but I wanted more up-tempo, angry music, I guess. I don't know how to explain it. That was my only issue with the film.
Interesting. Boy, I just remembering back to working with Roddy and how great he was. Jeez.
The whole movie was great. Tim Van
Patten, now Tim was so good in that film, and he was so handsome, and I remember thinking, God, Tim's going to be a movie star if he wants to be, and his whole family is so showbiz, he'd have so much help from them to navigate show business and help him get there. Van Patten, back then, that name was gold in Hollywood. There were so many Van Pattens, and they were all doing so well. And Tim immediately became a director, and I ended up working with him one time on, what was it, The Hitchhiker? Is that right?
Oh, yeah, the HBO show. Great show.
Yeah. And it was so fun to work with him. That's another one. You see, you can't ever predict those things. I can't even remember now if I told you this off the air or on the air about Michael Fox and
yeah, off the air, yes.
Yeah, so I'll tell you on the air that Michael Fox is in that film, and I remember Michael and I spent a lot of time together. We had a lot of fun together during the shoot because we had some time off, and we get big trouble together in Toronto and stuff. But remember thinking, it taught me a great lesson, because I thought, Michael, I hope your dad has a factory somewhere, because I don't think you're going to make it as an actor. And she just shows you how stupid you are to ever judge anybody. But the same with Tim. I would never have guessed that Tim would be a director. He didn't evidence that when we shot in the class of '84 at all. And yet he's one of Hollywood's most successful directors.
Oh, all
and
the
one of his
Soprano episodes,
most well-liked, too. Everybody loves working with him, and he does great work that succeeds, you know. Where did that come from? But who knows?
You know, it was right around, probably immediately after class. Oh, let me ask you first, does it ever bother you that so many people associate you with that film?
No,
or are you
but I don't think they really do, actually. The thing on the street, if people notice me, and they don't much anymore, which is fine by me, because I look much older and much more beaten up than I used to. You know, actually, for me, being pretty, which I was back then, I really wasn't handsome. I was more pretty, and that was a kind of a handicap. It would open doors, you know. There's no doubt it opened doors and got you into be seen, but then it was a liability because nobody ever believed you were any better than that. And so I'm much happier now that that's gone away, that I've kind of solved that problem. You know, but what people recognize me from, if they recognize me from anything, is Riptide, that series on TV.
That was
I did for 3 years.
My next question.
And actually, I'd say the main thing people recognize, they usually recognize me from my voice, not my face.
Oh, yeah, your voice
is turn and say, I know you, I know that voice, you know? And then they say something, I've always wanted to do a coffee table book called I'm Sorry I've Forgotten Your Name. And I wanted it to be filled with pictures of actors you've seen and actresses you've seen 100 times, you know? And then, you know, 3 or 4 pictures of them doing parts you recognize them in, and then a picture or 2 of them in their real life, what they're really like, you know? Because that's what all of us actors get, who are not what people like to say A-list actors. In Hollywood, nobody uses that term seriously. It's kind of a term only used outside of Hollywood, but the ones that aren't immediately recognizable, people always say, God, I've seen you in something. I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name. What's your name? Right? And I say, Perry King, and they always say, oh, that's right, like I just took a wild stab at it and happened to get it right. It's so funny. Yeah, they always say that. But I always thought a book about, I'm sorry I've forgotten your name, would be really interesting to people, because you have a whole life and a career, and it's made up of, you know, there are hundreds of people in Hollywood that you recognize, but you don't know really much about them, and you don't know their name, and you've just seen them in a lot of stuff. And yet they have a whole complicated life behind that. You know, like, where the first one comes to mind is a guy named Basil Hoffman. Do you know who Basil is?
I don't.
Well, you would if you saw his face. Basil's been in a million movies. And I've known him since I was a teenager in Summerstock in Nantucket, Massachusetts. And I've been in stuff with him probably half a dozen times. And still run into him, you know. And Basil's having a wonderful film career. He just has a niche, and he knows exactly how to work that niche. He can sell himself. You know, again, to go back to the idea of we might be helping people out there listening who would want to have a film career or an acting career. And I help out a lot at a very good acting school, the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in L.A. There's 2 of them, L.A. and New York, Manhattan. And it's actually the oldest continuously working acting school in the world, which is surprising. You'd think that would be in England, but it's not. It's the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, the campus in New York, and they have this subchapter campus in L.A., and it's a very good acting school. Really good. Yeah, frankly, the only good one I know of in L.A. or on the West Coast. And I help out just pro bono, just to be useful. A good friend of mine teaches the acting department, right? And one of the things I teach the kids, or tell the kids, if I'm working with them, is I say, it's so important to know how the world sees you. Because what you see when you look at yourself in the mirror in the morning is not what the world sees, not remotely. What you see, it's the same with your voice. You know how when you hear your voice, and everybody always hates the sound of their own voice because it's not what they hear all day long. Their voice is very different than the one that the world hears. The same is true of their face and their identity. And I say you've got to figure out what the world sees when they see you, not what you see. Because that's what you're going to sell. Your own merchandise. And the best example is The Treasure of Sierra Madre. Do you know that movie?
I do.
Okay, the bandit chief. You remember him? The guy who famously says, "Bodges, we don't need no stinking bodges."
Yeah.
Right? The character, the actor's name, playing that part, is Alfonso Bedoya, and he was wonderful in that movie. That film won Oscars, and it was a great success. That scene at the end where they're going to shoot him, and his hat blows away, and he makes him stop for a minute, and he goes, gets his sombrero and stuffs it on his head, and then stands there, and they shoot him. You know, they execute him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, God, it was wonderful. He's so good in that movie, right? So, Alfonso Bedoya went to Hollywood after that film came out and won Oscars and was a big success. And he figured, great, I'm going to be a movie star. I'm in a magnificent hit movie, and everybody writes about how good I am. And he moved to Hollywood, and he got himself a nice house there, and settled into Hollywood, got an agent, ready to go. And among other things, he went to a dentist and got his teeth, which were horrible, craggy, ugly teeth. He got his teeth all fixed. And now he's a Mexican bandit chief with perfect chiclet teeth. And he never worked again. He did a couple very unsuccessful parts in a few films. It was the end of his career. He had no idea what he was selling. He didn't really understand who he was, the way the world saw him. What he needed to do is go to Hollywood and not fix his teeth, even though he probably hated his teeth. I say to these classes of young kids wanting to be actors, you know, some of them are really good, breathtakingly good, but I say to them, you've got to figure out what people want to buy from you, not what you like. What you sell may be the very thing you hate the most about yourself. If I want to work as an actor, right now, because of this film I just did a couple of years ago, I'm so happy with that film, I kind of figured, that's it. Let's just stop while you're ahead. It's in my opinion, it's the best thing I've ever done. And I directed it. I'm very happy about the direction, everything about it. So I figured, good, stop. But if I wanted to go to Hollywood, I'm not in Hollywood right now. I'm at a ranch that I own in the Sierra Nevada, which is where we shot the movie, The Divide. But if I wanted to work, I would go down to Hollywood. I would shave a beard that I've got on my head, get my hair cut, coiffed, tightly cut, and I'd go get a couple of brand new suits and go out and be the asshole wasp. That's what I can sell. That's what Hollywood sees me as. That's what they will hire me to play. The man that we all hate. The one that runs the company that's an asshole and has no sense of how valuable his employees are or something like that. That's what, that's what I can sell. Now, that's not what I want to play. That's certainly not what I play in this film, The Divide. That's why I had to make my own film, because I knew Hollywood wasn't going to cast me to play the part I want to play. Just like Sly in Rocky. You know, he knew he couldn't get. There was no way for him to get the part he wanted to play. He had to make it himself. He knew it. And it's a great lesson for everybody. But until you can make it, you got to figure out what you can sell. What do they want? Another example. One year, this young actress was doing a scene for me, and I'm supposed to critique it and tell her what I see, and how to help her with casting and audition. That's what everybody always wants to know about, because that's the agony of being a professional actor. Auditions. It's endless, and they're horrible. And it's just a fact. They're horrible, right? And she was obviously Native American. I don't know what tribe. But she was doing everything she could with her physical appearance to hide that. She was wearing glasses. She had her hair up in a way that she was trying to avoid looking Native American. And I said, you don't do that. That's your gold. That if they want a Native American young woman, they got to get you. That's your gold. then once you get going, sure, then you could branch out. But use it to get rolling, because that's what you've got, what the essence of who you are. And it, you know, the impression I had was that was the last thing about herself that she liked. But it doesn't matter, you know. I don't want to be a suited wasp guy, but that's what I can sell. And that's what I was. That's what I sold in Melrose Place.
I was just going to say.
That's why they cast me in Melrose Place, to be that guy.
Oh, you were a prick at Melrose Place.
Yeah,
but you were great at it.
And that's what I can sell. But if I don't choose to sell it, that's one thing. But Alfonso Bedoya, I didn't even understand it. See, and that's what you got to do. You got to know what the world sees. So that's what one thing I would do for these kids to help my friend out who runs the acting department. Is I'd meet them without knowing them. They'd come up and do an audition piece, and I'd tell them what I get from them, knowing nothing about them, just like they'd walk through the door. You know.
I have to ask. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, just that it's the hardest thing to get in Hollywood is the truth. When you do auditions in Hollywood, most of the time, almost all the time, you don't get the part. So you might do 100 auditions or 200, who knows? Could take forever to get a part. And they're endless, and they're brutal, and they're so demeaning. But you never hear why you didn't get the part. And I used to call my agent and say, get feedback. I want to know what they thought. And the feedback would always be, they didn't like you because they were too tall or too short or too fat or too thin or too old or too younger. It's all bullshit. They don't know. What they're really saying is, we don't want you. We don't like you. That's all. They don't know why. They just don't like you. They don't want you. You know, you can't go by it. You didn't want to hear that feedback. I finally learned, don't ask. Because if you don't get the part, you don't want to hear why they don't want you. Just go in and do what you can do, the best you can do. It's all over. In auditions, 95% of the time, the audition is over as the door swings open and you walk in. And I know this from often having been on the other side, where I'm part of the casting process. And as the door opens, you're looking for somebody who's auditioning for the part of Mary, you know, whatever. And as the door opens, you think, no, sorry, she can't play the part. But you can't say to her, I'm sorry to be rude, but you may as well just walk right back out because it's not going to work. You can't do that. You got to let them take their shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're sitting there waiting for them to finish and go. That's basically what's happening because they're not right. But they, of course, think that if I'm really good in this audition, I'll get the part. And actors always think, I could play that part. And yes, you could play that part. But somebody else could play it more in keeping with what they're looking for, or better, maybe. It's not that you can't play it. It's that they want somebody else more to play it, right? So if that's true, if it's over almost immediately, the moment you walk in the door, 95% of the time, what do you do at that time? Well, the answer is you have fun. You enjoy it. You treat it like a day's work. You have, because they're stuck. You could do anything you want for like 10 minutes. So I have fun. I audition. Actually, Lawrence Olivier said that. Lawrence Olivier. He said, always do something outrageous in an audition. He said, you might not get the part, but they won't forget you. So I tend to just go for broke in auditions. Whatever comes to mind, whatever I feel like doing. And if I see anybody squirming or looking at their watch because they're bored, I'm very mean. I stop and I say, I'm sorry, I don't think this is going very well. Can I start again? Which is the last thing they want because they really want you to go because they're behind schedule. They're always behind schedule. And they want you to get out of there and let the next guy in, right? Mm-hmm. So I torture them because they can't say to me, no, you can't start again. They can't do it. They got to go through the whole thing again. But that's what they reap if they're going to check their watch in the middle of my audition. They're going to get that. You remember, old age. What's that movie, dancing, singing movie that won the Academy Award about 2 years ago?
Was it Crazy Rich Asians? No.
Before, I think the year before that. It's L.A. La La Land.
Yeah, my wife was a big fan of that one.
Yeah, La La Land. Okay, so there's three Tell me the name. What's the actress in that? I can't think of her name.
I have to look, because if I told you I saw it, I would be a dirty liar.
Okay. Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, she's very good in that film, but there's 3 auditions in that film. And the third one, she's doing this audition. She's an actress in the movie, trying to get
Emma
going.
Stone.
What's that?
Emma Stone.
Emma Stone, right. She's really good in that film. But she does 3 auditions. The third one, she comes in, she's doing the audition, and they said, oh, my God, we got to get other people in to see this. You're perfect. We're going to rewrite the script for you. That's bullshit. That's a wet dream. That never happens. It doesn't happen. It's just not Hollywood. That's not the way it works. But the first 2 auditions, where she's doing this scene and she's good, and you're really thinking, holy cow, she's really doing a great audition. And they stop and they order lunch in the middle of her audition. And she's just so deflated by that. That's the way it feels. That's accurate. That's what happens. Auditions are horrible, horrible things. And there's no way to get around it. A lot of people try to pretend they're fun and blah, 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 and you know. But it's better, I think, to just face the music. It's really crappy, but you can't avoid them. If you want to work, you got to audition. They make everybody audition just to bring them down. You know, they make very well-known people audition just to sort of cut them off at the knees and put them in their place so that they don't ask for a lot of money or something.
How much of a dream come true was Riptide? You're on the beach, you got a boat, Corvette.
Yeah. Well,
you're able to wear a mustache, something I was never able to do. I mean, how much fun!
Yeah.
And it was a Cannell and Stephen J. Cannell.
Oh yeah,
make bad
yeah. But
stuff.
that part was great. Stephen Cannell was just. We all loved him. Everybody who did a show for Stephen Cannell loved him. And you know, he died young and unfairly. He had a crappy deal.
He had melanoma, I believe, didn't he?
Yeah, and way too young.
Oh, he
really
made
unfair.
Some of my favorite syndicated shows were by him. How much fun was it for you to be on that show?
Well, it was great. It was brutal in its own way because the schedule of something like this is, you know, you do 12 to 14 hours a day on the set. Then you'd have something like an hour's drive each way, and you'd have to do your homework, learn all the lines for the next day, and prepare, right? Mm-hmm. So there wasn't enough time to sleep, let alone to eat. On the other hand, it was cool, too, because I was single and Joe was single. Tom Bray wasn't single, and that was at the time, and that was probably a better way to be because it was like a dating service, that show. It was incredible. Every day there'd be girls in bikinis around. That was the show, right? That was the look of the show. But there was no time to go on a date. There was no time. Friday night, and I'm not exaggerating, Friday night, if we ended our shoot by midnight, we were lucky on Friday night. Wow. Then you'd go home and you'd pass out and you'd wake up finally at like 5 in the afternoon on Saturday. And theoretically you could do something with Saturday night, but Monday morning was going to start at 5 a.m. So you couldn't do anything with Sunday night. I mean, it was just brutal. Otherwise, yes, you're right. It was a dream. It was magnificent and so much fun. And it was critical to me that I got that part because, I don't know, my career was kind of hit a wall, you know? Mm-hmm. And I could feel it, and I needed that job. And I remember I did a screen test for it with Joe Penny. We were talking about this the other day. I saw him a couple weeks ago in L.A., and we were talking about that screen test. And after I did the screen test, this is typical. I'd done, I don't know, a couple auditions, and then they screen tested me, and I gave the screen test everything I had to offer, everything. And I felt good about it, which is pretty unusual, about something that important. And then the network said, well, we want you to come in and audition again because we're just not sure. And I did something very dangerous, but I think it was right, and I knew I had to do it. I said to them, no. I said, that screen test is as good as I've got. You either cast me or say goodbye. And they cast me. But I could have easily lost it. But I thought, I can't go into the network and now do an audition. I will go in with such a chip on my shoulder, so angry that they're making me do this again and go through the agony of that, because you care so much, so much. I mean, you feel like you're going to die if you don't get a part you want, and they make you come in and be light chatter. And, most of the people at auditions, they're rarely, these days, the director's never there. You're auditioning for a casting person and a couple of assistants and maybe a network person or two, and none of them have a clue what, not that acting is a big mystery or an art or anything, but they don't, that's not what they do. So they don't know what you're going through. They don't know what you're doing. They have no idea. And they just, it's agony doing those things. Just is. So, I said to them, no, I won't audition again, and that worked. They were kind of impressed by that, I think, and they cast me. And thank God they did, because I really needed that show. And it was great. But by the time we finished after 3 years, we were exhausted. We all three felt like we'd been hit by 2 trucks in a row.
How did Melrose Place come about?
Now, that's a different story, because, see, Aaron Spelling, whom I worked with, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, and Aaron Spelling had been an actor, so he was very different. He was a producer, and a very successful producer. It's kind of forgotten now by a lot of people, but Aaron Spelling in his day was Hollywood. He was the king of Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And Aaron loved actors because he'd been one, and he understood them. If you said to Aaron Spelling, Aaron, I don't think this scene is written right, he'd say, okay, let's see. Tell me, what do you think? He didn't think what most directors or editors or producers think, because they had never been an actor. They think, oh, for Christ's sake, just do it. Just shut up and do the job, You're paid to say the words, just do it. Aaron didn't think that. He knew that you were saying that because you couldn't do your job right if you didn't follow those instincts. When an actor says, what's my motivation? It's not a joke to an actor. It's a joke to a producer. A bad joke, often. Not all producers, but a lot of them. They don't like actors. And, I can't blame them. I mean, actors are a pain in the ass a lot of the time. But Aaron didn't feel that way. Aaron was wonderful. And so Aaron offered me Melrose Place. He knew who I was. He didn't need me to come in and meet him. We'd worked together a couple times. He just called me up and said, Perry, you want to be in Melrose Place? I got a great part for you. Want to do it? And I said, absolutely. I love working with him. It's always a joy was always a joy to work with Aaron Spelling. He was just, I don't know, I must have done 4 or 5 things for him. And whereas sometimes the projects themselves were questionable, the process of doing them was wonderful. Just great. Because he'd been an actor. And he wouldn't put you through crap if you didn't have to.
How much fun was it doing that show?
Melrose? Mm-hmm. Well, Melrose was, I think, to everybody in it, to most everybody, it was like a gig, You went in and you did, like, you could show up on that show, you say, what time are we going to wrap today? And they'd say, well, no, we're going to wrap at 6:18. Now, most shows, almost every show in the world, they'd say, I hope we get out of here before sunset, But Melrose was a science, man. You better like it if you get your words right on the tape, because they were going to print it and move on, So what that meant was in Melrose, if you were in the middle of a take, you're doing your close-up on a scene, right? And if you don't like what you're doing, you better intentionally club the lines and say, I'm sorry, I apologize, I'm going up, which is acting for, I can't remember my words. I'm going up, please give me a moment and let me do it again. Because if you complete it with the words right, they're going to print it and move on, and that's it. I mean, that show was either you were yelling at somebody or you were kissing them. That's all you did. The scene either began with you yelling and then you kiss him, or sometimes the scene would begin with you kissing him and then you start yelling. And the front box on the camera, the little wooden front box that normally holds filters and and maybe a light meter and stuff. Front box on Melrose was filled with breath mints and Banaka and stuff because we were all going to be kissing all day long. That's what we did all day long.
It's a dream job.
Kiss. Well,
I mean, it was for you.
You would think so, but I'm telling
Courtney.
you, and this is a cliche, but there's nothing less sexy than a love scene on a film set, because there are a lot of considerations, but being turned on is not one of them, you know? And whoever the woman is that you're with, I don't care whether she likes you or hates you, she's not interested in you. She's interested in playing the scene, making it look sexy, being good herself, making sure that the visuals are good, and making sure that if you're lying in bed, making sure that she doesn't expose herself in some way, and that her hair, you know, you can't touch her hair because her hair is going to be perfectly put in place, and there are all kinds of rules. And as I understand it, I'm too old to do that stuff anymore, but as I understand it, things are even tougher now. Apparently on film sets, or at least they would seem to me to be tougher. On film sets now, even before COVID, apparently they now have something on film sets called an intimacy coordinator. It's a new position on sets. It's a person that helps, theoretically, the actors feel safe and secure and watched over on intimate scenes, so they're not abused in any way. And I can see why that would be very valuable, particularly to females, you know, to women actors on sets, because it's really tough for them, because most of the people on sets are usually men. But still, one more person that you got to listen to and stuff. I mean, back when I was young, I did dozens, if not hundreds, of romantic scenes and love scenes, and I can only remember one time where it was sexy to me, and that was with Michelle Phillips in a miniseries called Aspen. Would have been maybe 1980, 79, 80.
Okay.
And we were doing this love scene, and they're lining up on us, which means getting the camera ready and checking focus points and stuff. And I'm lying on top of her because that's the way we're positioned in the scene, getting ready to shoot it. And I got excited because Michelle Phillips, to me, has always been one of the greatest, most beautiful women the world's ever produced. And I apologized. I said, "I'm so sorry. Excuse me, please." I couldn't actually move because I had to stay in position.
Yeah.
But I apologized. I said, "I'm terribly sorry." And she looked at me and she said, she smiled. She said, "That's okay. That's the nicest compliment you can give a lady." Isn't that great of her? I've always loved her for saying that.
Well, I mean, I was jealous. You got to, you know, spend your time romancing Courtney Thorne Smith on Melrose, you know, and
yeah, she and I didn't get along very well.
Oh, you did or you didn't? I'm sorry.
Yeah, did not. No, I don't know why, but I didn't know why, but she just didn't like me. So, but you know, she's a professional, so you wouldn't know it.
No,
it's just that she didn't particularly want anything to do with me. I don't know why.
I think the beauty of that show was, and I have no shame admitting it's one of, in my opinion, one of the greatest shows ever. And I think what made it so unique was, at the end of the day, every character on there was a complete scumbag. I mean, some were nicer than others and had maybe better motives instead of ulterior, but everybody was pretty much deplorable, and it was just a parody of daytime soap. But I loved it. I mean, and the sleazier you were, that's
a lot
what
of
you
people
rooted for.
loved it. I mean, it was never a show I watched before I was on it, and I certainly didn't watch it after I got up, because that's, in some ways, the worst thing you can do, because it sort of kills the show. If you're on it and you try to watch it, it just gets really complicated. But the person I loved on that show, loved working with, was Heather Locklear. And I worked 2 or 3 times with Heather Locklear on different shows, and she was just always wonderful to work with. So much fun, always ready to work, no bullshit, but funny and fun to work with, and no ego, and just great, you know? A lot of actors have a lot of ego. I mean, it just seems to come with the territory, and it gets a little dealing with people's egos. I mean, that's true of life anyway. So if you're stuck with somebody and they have a lot of ego, it can get long. The days can get really long that way. I mean, thank God in Riptide, the three of us really were that partnership. Somehow we got really lucky. We always felt like we really were our partners. And we did everything together, and we made decisions together. But inevitably, the production company would kind of try to split us up in Riptide, because they would be able to get more freedom to do things if they could sort of pit one actor against another. And we knew that, and we did not let them ever do that. We made all decisions together. There was one Melrose Place. I remember there was one funny scene where I was dead. I died. What did happen to me? I died.
In a plane crash, yeah. Or either as a plane crash or you drowned. No, you drowned on your boat. Or they never found your body.
Anyway, so there's a scene. I never saw the scene. I don't know what the scene was about. But I had to be in one of those drawers in the morgue.
Yeah, Allison had to identify you.
And identify me, right? So I had to lie in this drawer for a long time. It wasn't a real morgue, but I think the drawers were real morgue drawers, And when they'd open or close it, the top of it would miss my nose by a millimeter. And I think they all loved it. They knew I was really uncomfortable lying in that morgue drawer.
And I remember that
disturbing, it's very disturbing to lie in a morgue drawer. And you had to stay totally still, because they're going to open it at some point. I couldn't hear what they were doing, so I had to be ready for them to open it and show my dead body and stuff. That was a difficult scene, I remember.
I remember that.
I forgot about that.
Now I remember, because you were having like financial problems. You got drunk. You fell off your boat. And then your daughter, beautiful, beautiful daughter, has Allison, your wife, Courtney Thorne-Smith, arrested because she thinks that she pushed you over the boat. So then it led to that whole weird storyline. So it was like every week. It was like it was almost like in the writing room. Was it okay? Yeah. How do we make this even more hokey than we did the week before? It was so great. It never happen again. You'll never capture that kind of show again.
They tried to do it again with a show called Aaron did with a show called Titans. Do you remember that show? It was only on for about 13 episodes, but he had put me in that show with several young actors, and but that show was destroyed by the network, NBC. Who was the head of the network there? Garth Sear, I think his name was. And he made a mess of that show. He started fiddling with it, thinking he knew better than Aaron Spelling, and he ruined it. He just ruined it. And Aaron was pretty old and kind of feeble at that point, and he couldn't really fight back effectively.
I remember the sell point for me on that was I've always have been a big fan of John Barrowman, and I remember he was in that.
Was he? Let me think. Really?
Yeah.
In Titans?
Yeah, he played Peter.
Huh.
He was Casper Van Dien. I think he played Casper's either his dad or his brother.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yes. Yep. You're right. You're absolutely right. Yep.
Always been
Casper
a big fan
Van Dien.
Oh, he was good. Casper was really good.
We could have had a good show, a successful show. We could have had another version of Melrose Place, which is what it was supposed to be. Or it was really supposed to be another version of Dynasty, really. And it could have been if NBC, the network, and I think Garth here. It's hard to know exactly what goes on behind the scenes, but I think, anyway, if they hadn't meddled with it, if they hadn't stupidly thought they knew more than Aaron Spelling, why would you think that? Aaron Spelling was so good, but anyway, it was sad because Aaron really wanted one more hit before he left. He knew he was on his way out.
My wife watched.
He was such a good guy. God, Aaron Spelling. His name should be remembered more than it is because he was. So many actors had such good times working with him and made good money. He'd make sure he paid them well. Didn't try to crack you over the anvil of you're wanting the job the way so many producers would. What were you going to say? Your wife? What?
My wife watches the new Dynasty that her crush Grant show is on. And,
really? How is it?
Well, to me, it's just like Melrose Place, only not as good because it's not as self-aware. But I was just going to say that's what they're doing with that. I asked her, I was like, what's going on? Okay, this one kidnapped this baby, and this one has amnesia, and this one's sleep. I was like, okay, I got a headache already. I can't join this show.
Well, when I think of Grant, I think of racing, car racing, because I worked with him as an actor on that show. I don't think if we ever worked together, actually, on that show. But I really knew Grant from racing. We raced cars together a lot. And there are only a few actors in Hollywood, very few, that really know how to drive a race car. And he's one of them. He's really good. And he and I and a few others like Alfonso Ribeiro, very good in a race car, and Sean Patrick Flannery is superb. He's really good in a race car.
Jason Priestley was
there aren't
good
many
too,
actors. A lot of actors pretend to know what they're doing, but there aren't many that actually can get in a race car and get to the end of a race and be competitive.
How did Jason Priestley do? I know he used to race until he had that bad accident.
You know, I don't know. I never was on a track with him. But I would tend to think that I'm not sure how. I mean, one of the things that Grant did is Neon. When Neons were out, you remember the car, the Neon?
Oh yeah,
Chrysler Neon. So Neon wanted to raise their sort of respect level, and so they got half a dozen actors together that were good at racing, and they would send us across the country. We all loved this, of course, and they'd put us in local SCCA neon races. There was a class for neons, and they would prepare the neons for us and put us in these cars that were prepped. And of course, they prepared the cars exactly by the rule book, but all the cars we were racing against would cheat quite a lot. So all those cars usually were better cars than we had. And the cars we had, there's nothing that mechanics could do about it because they had to prep the cars absolutely. But we really mainly raced ourselves because there was always the top 10 or 15 of those cars. We couldn't touch them because they had more horsepower and they had, various things where they were cheating and nobody knew it. But anyway, Grant was really competitive with those cars. And if Jason Priestley had been really good, I would have thought he would have been in that group, Mm-hmm. Who was there? There was Alfonso and me and Grant and Sean Patrick Flannery and why am I blanking? Who else was there? There were a couple others. Trying to remember. God, we had fun doing that.
I write Grant Show's manager a letter or an email every month for the last year because I feel that if I don't get at least a 30-second interview with him, my wife will never let me sleep.
Okay, well, tell him to tell Grant that Perry King says, do an interview with him. It's fun. You'll like it. Do it.
I give him credit. He is, because he started out that small part on 90210, Melrose. All these years later, he's in Dynasty. I mean, he's anyone, just like you, anyone that can stay, to where multiple generations appreciate you. That's a major accomplishment in my eyes.
I would go further. I would say that that's true of him. Absolutely. He's a very good, smart, solid actor who you could put in almost any logical part and he'd be terrific in it. But that was the lesson that Jane Oliver, who was my manager and Sly's manager, when we did the Lords of Flatbush, she was my manager, Chris Sarandon, Susan Sarandon, and then I hooked her up with Sly because I told her how amazing he was. And that was the lesson she taught me. She said, that's the goal. She said, of an actor is not fame, not fortune. The goal is longevity. So anytime you're working, the question is, will this help me be doing this in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years? That's the goal, because that's the hardest thing to achieve, is to be around for a long time. To be a sudden big name flash in something and everybody knows you and then 2 years later nobody's heard of you. That's not what you want to have happen. Now, you may not have control over it, but to whatever degree you do. One of the meanest jokes I've ever heard, 2001 Space Odyssey, right? And the And one of the stars of it was Keir Delay. Do you remember that?
I do. I remember that movie.
Okay, a lot of people listening to us won't know who Keir Delay is. But Keir Delay was a very good actor of his time, and he was a big movie star for a little while. And Noel Coward, the famous, brilliant playwright and comedian, British actor and comedian, Noel Coward, who was such a wit. And Noel Coward one day said, Keir Delay, gone tomorrow. People said, mean but accurate. And that's what you want to avoid as an actor. That's the goal, to be around, to do it this year, next year, the year after. And that's what so many, like Jimmy Coco. I did a movie with Jimmy Coco. Do you remember Jimmy Coco?
I do.
Superb performer and wonderful man. Jimmy Coco taught me that. He said, that's what you got to do. You got to engineer it as much as you can so that you keep going. You don't go away.
Well, I can give you an example, like for you, because I said your longevity is amazing. My uncle, when I told him I was going to interview you, first thing, Lords of Flatbush. That's what he.
Yeah.
Now when I think of you, first thing I think of is I'm not going to lie, class of 1984. That's the first thing that pops in my head.
Yeah.
My wife, she's younger than me. Melrose Place clicks for her right away. I told my son, my son's 11. I said I'm going to interview Perry King. He said, Dad, he doesn't know any actor, actress. He knows no one's name. So I said, here's his picture. He said, that gang movie where they stabbed the guy from Back to the Future. I was like, yes. So, my uncle knows. We all know you just from a different era.
If a young person knows I'm an actor and they said, what have I seen you in? I learned that what they might have seen me in, these days actually some of them haven't seen me in anything, because I just did not, I got other things I'm doing in my life. But the one I say to them, because often they've seen this, is The Day After Tomorrow, where I was the president.
Yes.
That's the one that young people usually will click with.
My son was not a huge fan of that.
Really?
He's more of a, he likes his movies to the point. He likes his movies to be a nice, tight 80 to 90 minutes with not a lot of dialogue. He has a very short attention span, like this generation does. So,
boy, that's not what I like as a movie. The movie The Divide that I did, that was my own production. That was the movie. I wanted to make the movie I like to see, and that's a movie about the drama of ordinary life. The movies I like to see are the movies about people. When you walk down the street, you hardly see the people that pass you on the street. But if you knew their lives, any of them, pick anyone out there, if you knew their life from the inside, the way they know it, their life would be filled with drama, because everybody's is.
Yes, it is.
That's the movies I like to see, the movies about those people. The movies I don't care about at all these days are movies about people that fly around with a cape and kill faceless people.
Oh, you're not a superhero movie fan.
What's that?
You're not a superhero movie fan.
No, not at all, because I can't relate to it. It doesn't tell me anything about my life. I don't learn anything from that. Oh, the guy who flies around can't fly as well today? What do I care? I can't fly at all.
See,
I want it. A good example of that is Peter Fonda's Yuli's Gold. Do you remember that movie, Yuli's Gold?
I'm familiar with it.
Oh, God, that's a good film. Peter Fonda got a nomination, I think, for that. Peter Fonda was sort of a friend. I mean, I knew him from motorcycles, actually, more than anything, because that's one of my real passions is motorcycles, and he loved them. And he's kind of a famous motorcyclist. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. But I just revered him for Yuli's Gold. I bore him to tears, but I always wanted to talk about that, what he did in that. He was so good in that film. And that's a film about an ordinary guy dealing with the ordinary crap of ordinary life. Now, that's what I think movies should be about. And they used to be, years ago, the great period of movies, that at least old guys like me always think the greatest time of movies was the late 30s. I mean, it's amazing how many incredibly good movies were made in 1939. It's utterly amazing. I don't know how it happened, but none of them were anything but about ordinary people.
See, now, I'm the opposite. I love superhero movies, and I think I loved them and I gloat about them because I had a very lonely, horrible childhood. So I was comic books. My world revolved around comics. I still, to this 40 something years later, I'm still buying comic books. And you would get laughed at when I was younger. You know, that's why I had to start doing martial arts at a young age. You get beat up for reading comic books. Now, all those people that laughed, the number one movies in the world are all these superhero movies now that we have the technology. Mm-hmm. So that nerd in me is happy. I get to go see these things that I wish I had in my childhood, and I watch my son enjoy them. So,
that makes sense. That makes total sense
out of those.
Yeah, I can see that. That makes sense. Somebody explained to me who loves superhero movies, somebody said it's the new mythology. We're creating a new mythology. You know, the Greeks had their mythology. We have another new mythology. Our mythology in this country used to be Westerns, but now it's superheroes. I can understand that, although my mythology was Western heroes.
The only reason I sometimes get a little annoyed at the same time, I, of course, am a child of the 80s and 90s action films. And now, because of the superhero movies, that also became our action movie. There's no more the days of, the new Stallone's open, you got to go see it, or the Schwarzenegger. There was never any other action stars built. Now it's strictly superheroes, or which I enjoy, the Fast and the Furious. But the action icons are unfortunately kind of gone.
See, the problem as an actor that I have with all that is that it's really a pathway to CGI. All this is the business of show business pushing as hard as it can toward a future where everything is CGI, everything. Before, I don't know how old you are.
46.
Do you mind? What?
46. Soon to be 47.
Okay, so I'm 72, right? So probably not in my lifetime, but certainly in your lifetime. Although maybe in my lifetime, but certainly in your lifetime, you will go and see movies that look just like the movies you're watching today, and there won't be a living person in them. But you won't know that. It won't be clear to you that that's true. It's all going to be computerized. And the reason for it is the same reason for everything in our culture, worldwide, is money. It's not because they'll be better because of that or worse. It'll be because of money. The producers will be able to control the money side of it completely at that point. And it will leave actors on the side. I'm probably one of the last generations of actors. I may be the last generation of actor that can make a living acting on film. And people say, that's no good. I would hate that. They wouldn't be any good at all. They wouldn't have any personality. So, well, that's judging it by what you can see today. But the technology will get much better. And it'll be even better than, I don't know, who's the latest Batman? Who's the next guy who's playing Batman?
Robert Pattinson is going to be the new one.
Oh, right. Okay. So Robert Pattinson. So the next Batman, the first Batman that's completely CGI, will be better than any of the others. Because he'll be created to be perfect for that part in the computer, and the computer will be able to do it at some point. I don't know if it's 2 years from now or 10 years from now. Who knows the time frame? But it will happen without question. It's already happening. One of the things that most people don't see is there's no crowds, for example, in a movie. Anytime you see a crowd, you're not seeing a crowd. There's no crowd there. There's just 3 or 4 or 10 extras and a more. The crowds are created in the computer. Even small parts are now created in computers. Extras walking through hallways in scenes in a hospital, for example. They even can do CGI parts, small parts that say, yes, sir, I'll see to that, or things like that. You're not even aware of it, but it's almost there already.
I'm a living double standard. Like when it comes to these superhero films, the car chase films, I do like the CGI. I mean, you need it, you can't do it. But when I watch an action film or a horror movie, I like practical effects, makeup work. So I'm kind of the opposite. When I watch a horror movie, I don't want CGI a CGI wound with CGI blood. I want the old-fashioned. I want the latex and the makeup, and for certain films, I want to see that. Like, I don't have a problem with CGI in the realm of a superhero film or one of these big blockbuster films, but I can't watch that in every movie. It would drive me insane.
Yeah, but that's just because of where things are right now. It'll get so much better that you'll love it. You will love it, and the business will see to it that you love it. The business teaches us what we want to watch. I don't think people inherently want to watch movies that are $200 million budgets. The business teaches them to watch it because that's what the business wants to make. The business wants big budget movies. Little budget movies are just too much of a waste of time for the business to bother with. You know? Mm-hmm. And it's the business that runs it. It's not the show that runs it. Now, here's the positive side of this, because there is a positive side. For all the young actors or directors or anybody, writers out there that don't like the idea of movies going away from using real people and the old-fashioned way of, if you do something on film, you want something on film, you got to really do it in front of the camera. First of all, that's always going to exist, just the way stage is always going to exist, because people with passion want to do that. Like, I made my film, my own film. I did that not to make money. I did it out of my love for movie making and my passion to make this movie. And that's always going to be there. But also, for actors, young actors, if I meet somebody and they say, oh, I want to be an actor like you've been a film actor. And I say, okay, but what you probably ought to do is get really good at computers and computer graphics, CGI. Really study that, because in the future, the Steven Spielberg of the future will need people to be able to take that creative impulse that's behind an actor giving a performance and put that same creative impulse into creating CGI, because the computer won't be able to do that. I do not believe a computer's ever going to be able to be an artist.
No.
It's just going to be a craftsman, a brilliant craftsman, but not an artist. I may be wrong about that, because I've seen, for example, poetry written by AI programs, artificial intelligence programs, and this poetry is pretty amazing, pretty magnificent, really. So it's scary. But I believe that, for example, Shrek. You know, remember the donkey in Shrek? Mm-hmm. I forget the name of the donkey.
Donkey. It was just Donkey.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
And Eddie Murphy does the voice.
Yep.
But I lost track of him now. But I used to have a friend who had created. He was a graphic artist, and he created that donkey, that CGI donkey. Right? Mm-hmm. Not really CGI. It's graphics, though, right? Mm-hmm. He was as proud of his creation, of that physicality of that donkey, as I am of any performance I've ever given, as well he should be.
Oh, yeah.
He should be. So his creative impulse didn't... So an actor uses their voice and their face and their body to be creative. Well, in the future, somebody with that impulse will use CGI to be just as creative. And Steven Spielberg or whoever is going to need him just as much to do that and help Steven Spielberg make his movie in a huge computer bank room. You know, when he makes Schindler's List in the future, something like that, he won't do it with actors. He'll do it with a computer. But it's still going to be filled with creativity. It's just going to be employed in a different way.
Now, with that said, do you have any advice for people that are thinking of breaking into the business now?
Oh, boy. Well, let's see. That's such a big topic. First of all, there's two places to be, New York and L.A. in this country. And New York is the seat of the art. L.A. is the seat of the money, right? Mm-hmm. So, for example, I started in New York for about 3 years, and when I did the Lords and stuff, but I realized that there were about literally 10 people in New York who made a living as an actor. And I'm not exaggerating. Back then, and I don't think it's changed today. Maybe there's 20, right? And everybody else is practically starving. And whereas in LA, there's 400 maybe to make a living. Still not very good when you think there's 130,000 union actors. But the odds are better in LA. So I would say start in New York, learn the art, take it to LA, and then try and make a living at it. And the single most important quality for an actor or an actress, these days you use this term for both men and women, so the single critical quality for an actor is perseverance, is a capacity to never say die. If you talk about my longevity, well, I can think of at least 4 times in my career where all the people involved with me, my agents, manager, everybody said, that's it, you're finished, just give up, go do something else with your life, just give up. And at that point, you got to say, fuck you, and turn away and not give up. Find a different door to go through. Go through the open doors. You know, you talk about choice for actors. Well, you almost never get choice. You know, all you really get to do is yes to this or sit at home. Very often it's just sit at home. Nothing else, right? And when you're just stuck sitting at home, go join a workshop, get in an equity waiver play, do it, and go through the open doors. You want that job so badly, and the door closes and they say no. Turn away from that closed door and look for an open one. There's always an open door somewhere, always. When I finished Mandingo with James Mason, I remember we were at the wrap party and he said, oh my God, this is it. I'm sure this is it. This is the end of my career. I'll never work again. I can see it clearly. I have nothing to offer. I'm never going to be able to get another job. And he went off to get a drink, and I looked at his wife, and his wife said, he says that at the end of every movie. That year, he went on to do 4 more movies. In that year. Nobody does that, but he did it, right? So you always think you'll never work again. At that time when I did Mandingo, I've been married twice. I was married to my first wife, who was very, very smart lady, and she could see so many things so clearly. Incredible woman, really. Still a very good friend. But we just couldn't be married together because we drove each other crazy. But I have enormous respect for this woman. She's a good friend all my life. And she said to me one day, I was saying to her, oh God, I'll never work again. Oh, what am I going to do? And she said, look, Barry, look at it the worst possible way you can look at it. If somebody was dumb enough to hire you once, there's bound to be somebody dumb enough to hire you again. And she's exactly right. If you can ever get one job, you can always get another one. There's always another job somewhere. You just don't give up. That's what kills actors' careers. They give up. For thousands of different reasons, they give up. And frankly, that's what kills actors, period. Kills them dead. I have a number of actor friends, dear friends, that I've worked with that are dead because the business killed them. It depressed them so badly they killed themselves. And again, I don't want to name names. We all know who some of those people are, but the business, it's brutal. It's very brutal because when you're told no when you're an actor, you're not being said, they're not saying, no, I don't want your accounting services because you're not a good accountant. Well, I don't want you to paint my house because you're not a good house painter. Well, I don't want you to fix my plumbing. Well, I don't want you to write the story because I read your stories and not very good. They say, no, I don't want you. You, the person. Because that's what you're offering. You, your body, your voice, your look, your face. And they say no all day long. When you're a professional actor, what you hear over and over and over again is no, 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 no. Go away, leave us alone. They say, oh, we don't want you because you don't have enough film on you yet. So finally you get some film on you from a few sources. And then you know what they say to me? If I go and try to get a job, they say, oh, you're old news. You've got too much film on you. We want somebody new. Whatever you are, they're going to tell you no for whatever it is that you are. And all you can do is turn around and look for an open door. Mm-hmm. Don't give up. That's what counts, perseverance. Being really good, That's useful, being skillful, being what Hollywood calls talented. What the hell does that mean, talented? Who knows? Nobody ever defines that word. Right. Are you talented? Yeah, you're talented. I know hundreds of incredibly talented people who never work, right? Mm-hmm. What else? Beautiful. I know hundreds of beautiful people, men and women, that never get anything going for them, right? What else can you have? A great voice, intelligence. Well, intelligence is an impediment to an actor. I think it's better to be dumb, frankly. I'm fairly intelligent and quite well educated, and that's always been my biggest problem. I think too much. It's better not to think so much. The thing that has served me well is, as my older sister does, because she says that we share this trait. She and I, we share this trait. She says we don't know when to fold it. And that's a bad thing in some parts of life. Sometimes it's better to say, I quit, I give up, but not in acting. Don't give up. There's a company called Aerostitch that makes really great motorcycle equipment. The best motorcycle equipment in the world, in my opinion. And the guy that runs it, Andy Goldfein, is a good friend of mine, and he has a sticker with a picture of a guy. It's kind of a famous drawing, but of a guy on a motorcycle, and he's kind of flying. He's just holding onto the handlebars, but otherwise he's not touching the motorcycle. And the sticker says, "Never say die." And that's my motto, man, as an actor, and that's my motto as a racer, too. When I was racing cars a lot for 20 years, I ran pro for a little while, and boy, does that pay off in racing, too. Don't give up. You never know what's going to happen. And I would say practically every race I ever won, I won by not being the fastest guy out there, not being the best driver, not having the best car, none of that. By surviving and letting everybody else screw up. That's how I won the race. By being there when everybody else was gone, That's how you win. So that's my best advice. Start in New York, go to LA after a few years, after you start to get a feel for the art of it, then take the art to the business in LA, and don't quit. Don't let anything stop you. Whatever it is. But boy, it's a changed business. Just the idea of intimacy coordinators confuses the hell out of me so badly. I don't know how I'd survive. And soap operas. These days, you know what they're doing for love scenes? Because soap operas are all about kissing, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a major part of what they do. And these days, they're using mannequins. Did you know that?
I did not.
Yeah, because they couldn't figure out how else to get around the COVID rules.
Oh, yeah.
So now they do mannequins where it's over the shoulder of the mannequin onto Jim, somebody, when he kisses, Mary. And then you cut around, and now it's a shot of Mary over Jim, the mannequin's, and they cut it together, and they're getting away with it.
I truly can't thank you enough. This has been a great honor. You've always been one of my favorites.
It's been great talking to you. I was about to say I got to go because I have horses and they're pissed. It's about to be sunset here, and if I don't feed them by sunset, I'll hear them yelling at me. So I got to run.
Well, I really can't thank you enough.
Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen. You have been listening to the Chronicles of Hollywood History. Thank you from Gomez Richmond Productions. Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen. You have been listening to the Chronicles of Hollywood History. Thank you from Gomez Richmond Productions.